Hi guys, I'm Jen. Welcome to my channel. Today I wanted to make a video about how it feels like, when I was a child, it feels like I was almost sort of trained to ignore my natural instincts. And it felt like, as a child, it's so strange because you're told like not to talk to strangers. You're taught a lot of different things in order to supposedly keep you safe, but I recognize when I did a lot of unsafe things, especially as a teenager. And it's weird because you know we had a lot of rules for no reason growing up, and I noticed that as I got older, my parents, they just kind of gave up. And I remember when I was younger and I was a teenager, and I think I was in grade 10 because I went to a new school. I needed some space because I had a twin sister, and like we were always together. And I just felt at that time like I need some space. And so I went to a new high school, and that's where I met this girl who introduced me to alcohol. And she had access. Her mom didn't hide it. She didn't lock it. And I remember like the first couple, like it was one night, and then the second night of a weekend that she would just fill up her cups. We would go to the mall and drink in the bathroom there, and then just hang out that night, right? And then the second night we got caught because like I couldn't stand up. I could barely speak. And so the cops found us at the mall because that's where we used to hang out all the time. And this girl had been drinking for a while, and this was my first time. So already right there, I really didn't. I mean, she's just a kid, really, but that doesn't feel much like a friend. I don't know why her mom was leaving that shit open, to be honest, with someone her age. I think she was in her own world. And that's when I started drinking heavily in high school. And I just remember there's so many times where I would get so drunk and I was so sad. And it would be really embarrassing because I would drink too much. Not every time, but I would drink too much. And there are times I just remember being so emotional in front of a bunch of people. And then I remember it the next morning, I'd feel so embarrassed and like pretend like it didn't happen, but it definitely happened, right? And later on in life, looking back to this, I just remember I also started smoking in high school to fit in. So, I mean, it could be just to fit in, that could be peer pressure, but I also felt like, I wonder about these things about peer pressure. Like, if I've been taught to become more independent in myself, like encouraged to build confidence and to say what's on my mind as a child, would I have fallen into that peer pressure? Because I just think it's important to like review how a lot of kids are taught, and there's a lot of blame put on children for like falling into peer pressure and not listening to, you know what I mean? And like if you're encouraged to do this, I'm not trying to blame, but I think it's important to start looking at these things, because I feel like there's a lot of things that are blamed on children, and they look at people like the children's behavior, but I just don't see that they're ever looking at the really fully looking into the adult's behavior. And I think a lot of adults can be very similar in nature. And so like if they have to recognize that behavior in that adult, they might have to recognize it in themselves potentially. Because I do feel like during the time that I grew up, there's a lot of adults who just were holier than thou and just thought they're the adult, so they know better than the child. But in reality, like, they don't know much more than me, because all they have is their experience as, getting a license and buying a house and maintaining a job. And everyone thinks that's experience, but I don't think that's just following the person before you, not growing more than them. And so when I was drinking and when I was smoking, I know that I was living in a household, and at that time, I was becoming more aware of who my father was as a parent and as a person. And I was recognizing later on in those years, is like when I would have a friend come by and like we would drive her home, like he would spend so much more time talking to her than he's talked to me. And that felt kind of strange because I'm like, what? Like, it was just like, it felt like dad's, here goes dad. Like, you know, it just, I don't know if I remember thinking it, but I do remember like back to that time. I'm just like, I felt like kind of embarrassed because dad was making such an effort to like be overly friendly to my friends. And I'm not saying in like in an inappropriate way in that way, but I just find it like, I felt like he did that with a lot of people that weren't his family, like who would be really performative in the way that he was, you know. I'm like, that is not the dad I know. I'm like, I wish I could see the guy we get at home. And I understand we treat, you know, we behave differently in our own home in front of other people. I get that to a point. But when it becomes like abusive and normalized, when like you overreact and you are emotionally abusive to your children, we need to start recognizing that instead of normalizing it. Because I know I, as an adult, later took on that exception of like losing my temper to my children. And well, I don't think it was as much obviously as my father, but I know I was put under a lot of pressure when the kid's dad was being financially abusive and removing my child support. And I know that I had selective support from my family members. Like, um, it's really hard to, it's like I would they would give me something of support or something, but it felt like it was conditional in the way that like, I'm going to do this for you, but you're going to have to accept this from me, which was like the fact that you know, this would be like a different levels of care. I don't know, it's just such a strange thing. Like my, it just feels like I was putting in way more effort, and I was treating other people's kids like they're my own. And then the people who claimed to love me were like taking care of my kids, but it was competitive. So not, it's not that they were taking care of my kids; they were using it as an area where they could let their kids feel bigger than my kids. And I do recognize that happening a lot. And also, there's a guy I used to date, and he used to do the same thing. He needed his kids to feel higher than my kids, and so he would never discipline his kids. And I would do it in the wrong way because that's how I was taught. Like, I was like, my dad would discipline me in front of everyone to show that he was a good dad, and I thought that's how you do it. And so I definitely regret doing that to my kids because I thought that's how you show people that you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, and it's not. And while this other guy, he would talk to his kids in private, and I'm like, I like that, but there was no actual accountability. And I felt like it was more of a time where he talked to his kids but never held them accountable, because it was, he didn't want his kids to feel bad. So like, his way of disciplining his kids without like a big conversation would be, he would address the whole group instead of the one child. And so his kid that was causing the concern, like the issue at the time, he wouldn't address that kid. He would blame all of our kids. So now my kids are getting in trouble for his kids' behavior, when my kids didn't do it, the behavior. My kids are actually doing what they need to be doing. And so once you realize this, it feels like you can't really go to them anymore for support or childcare, because it's not really taking a burden off your back. It's adding something more to it, because you're like, okay, like, how are you treating my kids when I'm not there? That doesn't make me feel good either, right? So it's just like passing them off from an exhausted parent to another bullying parent. And so yeah, so when I was a teenager, I started smoking, and I definitely feel like I was feeling suffocated in that home, because like, once you start to recognize abuse, you can't unsee it. And I definitely think that's what was happening. And I think for so long, like, as a teenager, I was starting to get more comfortable voicing my opinion, but it was like kind of like, you know, as I would later do it later in life, is I would soften it, you know, like, or I'd say it to my mom, but never to my dad. Like, we could start talking about it out loud to each other, but, and we would joke about it, but it wasn't really funny, if to be all honest. Like, well, looking back, I'm like, this is not something to be like laughing at, that, you know, oh, dad's losing it again. I remember I did acid one night, and he knew something was off about me, because I did drugs, not a lot of them, but I definitely had a little bit of experience with them. And I remember I came home one night, and I think my pupils would have been dilated. It's been a while. And so like, he was looking at me when I came home, and he was like trying to sense something out, like something's off. And he couldn't smell any alcohol, he couldn't smell any drugs or anything. You know, he checked my bag, he did the whole thing. And it's so interesting, like, we'd put so much effort into that, and to trying to find something wrong with me, as opposed to like taking some time to be like, why are you doing, like, what's going on here? What are you feel? And not that that would have helped at that point anyways, because I did not trust this man. This is like, his label was parent, but his position was bully. And so, and then same with, like, I would joke with my mom later on about this, but in reality, like, she was backing the bully. She was there too. And so, I later recognized, like, alcohol was a way to, like, numb the pain, but also I would make, like, it wasn't a great place to be in. It was unsafe to have alcohol, and it would numb. That would also numb my instincts, right? And so the fact is that I had to handle the pain by drinking alcohol. It would numb myself out, and it would erase my memory. But then I was like, I just wanted to, like, relax. I felt like the cigarettes, for me, like, it's almost like a force. Like, I had to force myself to breathe, because I feel like I've been living in an environment for so long with the predator. And I think that does something to your system. Like, I don't know all the terms. When I talk in my videos, I'm not a doctor. I've not had people explain this to me, because I've not had good experiences with therapists either. But I feel like it has to do with maybe my adrenals, I think, or something. But I just feel like the thing that tells you to get out has been disengaged, because I'm living with a predator. You know what I mean? Like, it's almost like because I think that's where the fight and flight and freeze and fawn come from. But I think that does something to your system. Just because I'm fawning, like, my mind doesn't know that, right? Because it's been camouflaged with belief systems that kind of back this behavior. So it's very confusing, because, later down the line, there's environments where it's like that freeze like, I remember there's some situations I've had in a doctor's office when I was, like, in my 40s, and I'm like, I froze again, but I'm an adult woman, and I'm totally capable of walking out of that room and stopping what I thought I should be able to stop what was happening in that room with the doctor. And there was someone there with him, but, like, nobody stopped it or recognized it. And then I, as a person, am still freezing at the age of 40. That's messed up. So something from childhood has disabled, it feels like something has disabled my ability to speak up for myself and call out, right? For help. I don't know. This is something that, and in order to survive, it's almost like I think maybe that's what the fawning is, like, have to accept what is happening here in order to survive living here, right? And I do feel like going to church really normalized a lot of this stuff, because it felt like the belief systems, when I look back, those belief systems really, obey thy father and mother, and like, where this needs to be, the Bible needs to be revised. It needs to be like a revision of, like, morals and values and integrities. It needs to say something very different. I would love to create not like a different version of the Bible, where we talk about morals and integrity and values, but in a way that, like, that keep each individual safe, as opposed to, like, a Bible that is meant to control others, because that's to me, that's my experience what the Bible is. And yes, it has a lot of wonderful, beautiful messages in there, but it's also interwoven with a lot of control tactics. And so to me, the Bible is an unsafe book, because it supports bad behavior that allows other people to be controlled by these gaslighting techniques. And I think that's an accurate depiction on that, because it really bypasses a lot of just common sense in some ways. And I think that's part of it, because there's things where it talks about, like, the Red Sea parting and turning water into wine. And I need more information. I have questions about that. And I don't think I was allowed I just you imagine like a little girl asking like, can you tell me how Jesus turned the water into wine? I need more information. Can someone get back to me? He's like, I have a question. Can you explain how the Red Sea's parted? I need to know more about that. Can you let me know about, like, because like, what would you say? Like, questions were not encouraged as a child. Let's be honest, questions were not encouraged. And so we just had to conform. And I think that's where the mind, I want to say splits, but I don't know anything about the mind in that way. But there's something, I'm just putting this in the best words. These videos are just put in my best way to explain what I'm experiencing and trying to get my message across. But it's just such an odd thing. Like if you look at some things in the Bible, it's very fairy tale like. It's very fairy tale-ish. And while I can relate to certain parts in the Bible and sort of like the message that it's conveying, like Noah's Ark, I can understand parts of that. Like when I, put it in my perspective, I can feel, I think I did it in another video, talking about like, feeling like having an idea and wanting to do something different than the rest of the people I'm around, or yeah, it feels different. I think that, David and Goliath, I can relate to that because I've been in a number of environments where I've been targeted by a group, bullied by a group, and I've come out of there with more experience and knowledge than I went in with, and I survived it somewhat. It doesn't mean I didn't get damaged in the meantime, but I also I gained more insight and clarity. So I can see where some things I can read that and I can pick out that story and I can be like, I can pick the lesson from it. And that's wonderful. But like if you ask people, like they're going to tell you Jesus turned water into wine, period. And they weren't there. And they're not recognizing, like, women are trying to gain more rights. But they, like, think about, like, the further you go back in history, women had less and less rights. So this feels like this, it was written by a man, right? So you got to understand, like, and I think that's what a lot of people are coming to conclusion with. There's a lot of, like, blaming and degrading women in the Bible, and it's odd that people don't recognize that part and they just kind of skim over that part. And I think that's not by accident. I think that's how I've been raised, is to kind of skim over the bad behavior of the one writing the story. And this also kind of piggybacks after the last video I made about my dad and like his history. His family tree book that he wrote, there's a lot of inaccuracy, and he's written it from a point of view that is not the version I saw of my dad, and it's very 2D, and meaning it lacks warmth. It lacks warmth. And while he's a very dramatic and theatrical individual, the warmth is very different. That's nurturing, that's cherishing, that's endearing. I don't remember experiencing those emotions from my father. And so I think it's interesting that we just kind of bypass certain situations. And like, so I would then, as a young woman start getting into relationships, or the idea of it, or attempting them, not really knowing anything, because nobody talked to me about what to look for in a relationship, what that looks like, and nobody talked to me about anything like that. And so like I'm just kind of stumbling along in life, and there's things that I'm seeing, like the red flags that I'm seeing, and I'm just like, that's just them. That's just them. Like that's how, like, I had to look at it in my life. I think with my dad, that's just my dad, like that's just who he is, like acceptance of it. But that's just my dad. Those red flags, when people talk about red flags, you look at it like it's an item, like a red flag, but it's really a lifetime of pain. If you ignore those red flags, like what you're signing up for is a lot of pain and betrayal and emotional abuse and gaslighting. That's what that red flag stands for. It's not just that person can't socialize and handle truth. It's just like that person will mess with your mind and weigh you down in your emotions so badly and create so much self-doubt in your up here that you don't know which way is up and which way is down. That's not just like, I think we even gotten so used to red flag to just normalize it now. And I don't think people understand like the weight of, some people maybe, but like the weight of what that red flag means in reality. And I think that's through my number of experience of ignoring it and just thinking that's just who people are. I'm meant to accept them, which is interesting because, like, you know, the same people that expect you to look past their abusive behaviors are the same ones making judgments about other people. It's really strange. And I can't imagine as a child, because like I don't think my dad has changed anything. So I can imagine, like, you know, when kids are in the room listening to adults talk, like just because they're not talking to you, you're still picking up information, right? Because I was very like I'm a very observant individual, and well, I couldn't make sense of what I was hearing at the time. That was my foot, not a fart. Um, I think it's interesting because what makes a grown woman like disregard her instincts at this age? Like, I'm a grown up. I'm required to pay for a house, keep a job, and yet I can't even protect myself. Like, I've learned now. I've learned a lot. But it's still challenging because, like, when you still feel like one against some, that still can be challenging. And when you go to people who are supposed to be support and safe spaces and they end up to be predatory in nature as well, that's scary. That's a scary world to live in. And I'm not going to let myself be ruled by fear anymore. I can't. I just can't afford it. And but that still doesn't mean it's not out there. And so I just find it odd that, like, if I'm still experiencing this at this ripe old age, why didn't, like, I feel like I didn't get taught any of these things. We didn't talk about these things. We didn't talk about, like, deep things. And I think that's where I didn't get that emotional connection with my parents, because we didn't talk about deep things. It was very surface level. And that's what emotional connection is connecting on a deeper level, a more human level, and acknowledging, like, life isn't a bowl full of cherries, and to expect it to be that way and expect your family to behave in a very robotic, unnatural way just to make you comfortable is a really high requirement that really takes them of their humanity, because it's humiliating too at times, because, like, when you try to speak out about these things and now you're made to be the bad guy or you're made to be the trouble, that's even worse. This is even worse. Like, I've experienced this all through my life so far. That's not light. That's not light. That's a burden to have to carry all these people's bad behaviors because they didn't want to deal with them themselves, right? Like, you know, and I can only do so much as a child, and then, like, as I recognize this in an adult, like, it's hard to change this. I understand, and I'm not. I'm trying to move away from, like, judging people on, like, their bad behaviors, because we're all experiencing life as we are, and I can't make one person learn faster than I can. But at the same time, like, this affects my money. This affects my quality of life. Having to deal with other people who refuse to acknowledge that they're toxic and cruel and cold. And yeah, this is really crazy to have to. And now that I've done the work, the way that I learned to get back closer with because I'm still working on this, because you still have that sort of, like, you're wanting to connect with people, but I'm still working on who is safe and who is not, and I'm still revising it. Like, it's almost like I still have to put it through. It's so strange. I have to put it through two filters. I have to put it through my my wounds, you know, like what I've been, like, I have to put it through, like, the gaslighting. So I have to be like, does that, am I making exceptions for bad behavior? And then I have to put it through my heart space and say, like, am I connecting too soon because I feel lonely? But then I also have to, like, look at, am I doing this because I don't have a financial foundation? And then I also have to put it through, like, you know, my dad did make judgments about people. And so, like, I still have to filter through that as well, because I know I picked up certain belief systems that have been his as well. And so can you imagine, like, as a person living life where you just want to, I just want to be in life. you know, and I don't want to feel like every time I have to make a decision, I have to go through all. And I think it's important not to just like be, you know, impulsive. Impulsive is not a great place to be either, but it just feels like the other way is like it's almost I have to go through all these things, and then the moment passes, and so I can see how um, opportunities can be missed from someone who has lived a life like mine, because like you're up in your head so much because you're trying not to do as your father did, but you're trying to, you know, be a different parent and person than him. And your mother was an influence too, but then she's very passive. And like you, I understand I am who I was raised by, in a way that those are influences on me. They're not necessarily me, but they're definitely, you know, I learned a lot from them in a way that I was very submissive for a while because my mother was. And, you know, my father's advice to who was safe and who was not safe was more like judgments of who people are and who they aren't, but like that wasn't really accurate, is put through his filter of insecurities. And so now I'm having to like find out, like I have insecurities too, and so he also placed, like, made me feel insecure, you know, by making me feel small. So not only am I trying to like live this life by trying not to judge others, trying not to judge myself, trying to decide if you're safe or not, and then also like how close can I get because I am not in a safe spot myself. Like that's a lot going on for a human, and I can't imagine like even for a child. Like, so it's just, I wonder if like, you know, I definitely believe like I was a quiet child in some of these rooms, and I think that's by design, because I just like, it was just probably easier being quiet than trying to step on one of these time bombs of like saying something wrong, because my father was not physically, like we got the belt once, and I don't remember getting spanked often. So it wasn't really that. It was more of the emotional, like the looks. His eyes were so cruel. Like I don't know. And this is like as a child. I don't know. How do you? You know, I was really challenged when the kids were teenagers. I was really challenged. I just don't. And I don't know because I'm not looking at myself when I'm looking, but when he's and I've watched videos when I was younger with my kids, and I'm definitely disappointed in how, like, I was just exhausted, and I didn't have a kind face for them. I had an exhausted face. I had an impatient face. I don't know, and I hope to God not, but like this man had an angry face at me. I don't know. It's really odd. And now, as the older he gets, like that, he's lost that because now he needs something and he doesn't have the power anymore. He tries to exude it by, you know, he's still doing it through emotional and like gaslighting and manipulations when he does reach out. But I just think it's something to look at, is like what happens so often that I disregard red flags in other people. Like what? That's not natural. That's not how, like growing up as a human, like we have survival instincts, and as society now, it's almost like we've turned off. You know how you can go on your computer and you can like turn off whatever. Like when I'm going live and stuff, I can turn off comments. I think if I want to, like that sort of thing. Like there's a switch where you can just turn off this, turn off that. I feel like whatever happened to me in childhood, like there's a switch where I had to turn off my intuition, turn off my instincts, and like that's got to be what that fawn is, right? Like but or is that freeze? That's why I don't really like labels, because like I can go in and Google it, but I just know that for me in that experience, like I'm frozen on that doctor's table when he was being inappropriate, and it wasn't the obvious inappropriate, but it was definitely across. It was across. He was very unprofessional. And that's what they do. It's almost like it's not this bad. It's not, they're not going to do something there that, like, this is where there was a man I worked with, and it's like he's just on the line. Like he would touch me all the time on my forearm, but there were times, a lot of times, like my forearm was normally resting beside my side, and there's a lot of times like where I'm like, you're getting really close to a personal area of my side boob, and there are times where I'm like, I think he touched my side boob, but I was just like, you know, I just kind of like, no. And he positioned himself as a nice, funny guy. And so I had to get like to the point, and that's where he eventually touched my butt, right? So like that's, but he did it in passing, like by accident. And then I remember watching this video on YouTube where this guy in Australia on a beach, this young boy was like, every time a wave would hit, he would jump under the wave because he had positioned himself behind a younger girl. And so when the wave hit and they all kind of went under, he would grab her and pull out her bikini bottoms and things, and touch on her and act like it was just an accident, but it was really like set up, structurally set up. He was looking for an in, so to speak. And so they do it in a way. So what we lived with my father was like, from the outside, it looked like a happy, healthy home. But if you were to record it, you would see like the true nature of him. And if you were looking, it's like, why was nobody looking? Why has nobody been looking? That's my question too. Like, how has nobody been looking? And that makes me think of a bigger problem. Like, that's what I mean. Like, this is like a parenting problem. Not necessarily, is this like, I don't know. Is it because there's a lot of parents that just think I'm the boss and you're the child and what I say goes. But like, what if you say is wrong? And like, you can't, like, there's two people in this dynamic. You don't want to know how your decisions and behavior is affecting a child, like, and I watch Super Nanny, and you can see some of these parents are just like, I get that they're stressed out, but like, and I've been there too, honestly. If my decisions didn't start biting me in the butt, I might not have ever stopped. So I think that's the other side of things. That's that impulsivity, right? So where does that come from? Because we have we're ignoring the survival instincts, but we're also impulsive towards bad decisions, like, because we're trying to fill that void that was created in childhood, and feeling enough and being enough because somebody made us not feel that way. So like, how is this on a whole that all of a sudden we're just kind of like recognizing this, and still some people are still not, like, the message isn't across the board yet. It's like, it's almost like I just saw a chalkboard, like the brush is erasing it. You can see the essence of it still with the chalk. When you erase something, you can still see the chalk dust and stuff, but there's like the words have been erased. And I feel like this is intentional. It feels intentional. It feels cruel. I don't understand how, when I think of that I've hurt my children, that breaks my heart when I think of that. And I made a video talking about this, and I had to turn off the camera because I can feel it now. And I don't understand. Well, I understand the fast energy of life and the way like things are happening, and it feels like, I know when I was raising my kids, it felt like I was grasping for air often, and yet I would still choose to pile things onto my plate because I didn't feel like I was doing enough. That's from childhood. What makes you push so hard to like try to be doing all these things and still feel like it's not enough? Like, because I still didn't have enough. So like, by this highly restrictive, controlled upbringing where I was on my best behavior, what that results in later is like a mess of a person, because you're so constricted and conformed to their fucked up idea of how a child should behave, that now it's almost like you bust loose. And I think that's what the rebellion period is, when you get into the teenage years, because you're just sensing and sniffing freedom. And you're just like, it's just a matter of time before you can escape, which is not what I want to be seen for. Like, I don't want my parent or my kids to think they have to escape me. That's a horrible, can we not see like how wrong that is? Like, this is where I'm saying this. Like, when my kids decide, like, when my kids were getting older and like wanting their independence, I allowed it, not allowed it, but like, I was like, I'm like, I have to be okay with this. Like, I that's what they want. I didn't accept it at first. So I was like, is everything okay? Like, it feels like, is this normal? that older kids don't want to spend time with their parents anymore. And I was in a very depressive state for a long time, very sad. And I was always talking about how I was trying to become better and heal myself. And I definitely feel like we had a very sad household. It was very depressing and it was very challenging. But it made me reflect. Instead of say my kids are just like that, I'm like, okay, but like I can see how I don't I don't like being around me either. And I had to like look at like what choices am I making, and why am I so sad, and why is this, and how am I creating this, and how can I change this, instead of like blaming. Like, what am I blaming? Who am I blaming? Well, I understand like this is my childhood. Yeah, that definitely affected me. But I also uh, also I wasn't blaming my parents. I was recognizing how my childhood really shaped me to become who I was as an adult too. Like that has a lot to play. I can't blame my parents anymore because like I am required to pay my own bills. So I think there are times where I had my siblings accuse me of like, stop blaming all your problems on mom and dad, and like, and it's interesting that it came from the person that it did, because I don't think they were holding themselves accountable, and they were really relying on other things outside of themselves as well. So me being a single mom, like I was definitely addressing all these things, and I think because I was a single mom and because I was saying no, while it felt hard in the time, being excluded from these groups, being isolated from these individuals, and then also having my money put into sort of like a pause mode has actually helped me to get honest with the painful truth of like aspects that are within me, but then also what I move towards. And I want to say craving, and it's like I'm craving connection, but I had to be careful what that connection looks like, because I had to distinguish what connection was. And because there's a lot of connections that I was in, like they were just lust based. I was going to say, yeah, lust based, not laced. And I had to recognize that. And those relationships that I was connecting with, like, I always ended up with nothing, with me ending up with nothing and them taking everything that I had. And it eventually got to the point where, like, I've got nothing left to give to my kids. I got nothing left to give to me. And I'd literally just given it to, and it's not even like they stole it. I gave it to them. Like, I willingly gave them all my labor, my emotional, mental, and physical labor, to a human who my red flags, were disengaged. Like, it's almost like I opened the door to the predator, literally. That's messed up. And so that happened in my childhood. And so like there are times when I get really angry with my mom because she didn't stand up for us, and that's when I have to step back and understand, like, I know she experienced that too. I can't force her to grow and recognize and do things. I wish she would for herself. It's not necessarily like, I could have definitely benefited from having a mother. Oh. And a father. Like, I definitely feel like orphan energy. And it's so weird because people will tell you you're being dramatic or it wasn't that bad, but it was that bad. And I don't know how people who, I don't know. I think about other people who have experienced even more. I feel like it would be even more challenging and more confusing. When either children who are sexually molested by their fathers or family members, and or like that, outright abuse of, like, of a parent physically abusing them. I don't know. I don't know how. That's I don't know. I don't know how a parent does that, but I also don't know, like, the idea of it is, how does the child process that? How does a child process that? So all these different types of abuse, I can see, as you learn these from your parents, I can see that. I'm guilty of that. I'm guilty of doing things that my parents did to me. That's what I knew. That's what I was taught. That's what I learned. That's the best explanation of it as I can say. But to continue it after it actually happens and not realize like this is hurting my child, I don't. That's a part I guess I'm confused about. Is like I think there are people who get in that situation, and you know what I mean. Like that's how I was shown how to offload my emotions. Was that you do it at home, and you do it to people who are that have to stand by and listen to it, and like they don't have a choice to leave it. And I don't know, there's something, I understand patterns and passing them on, like if someone's hitting their kid, I think that's been done to them. And but at the same time, what I'm just trying to, I don't know why it goes on for so long and it isn't stopped. Like I don't know if this is a, I don't know what that is. I don't know. All I know is that when I started like recognizing my life was falling apart, I was hurting my kids, I was exhausted, I was miserable. And I guess the more that got taken from me, then I could really, all I had left was to focus on the pain. Not only that I was experiencing, but I had inflicted on my kids, you know, like I wasn't that nurturing mom that they deserved. I had moments of nurturing, but it wasn't like 100% nurturing. You know, people were playing with my money. I didn't know how to make money. And so life was definitely challenging in that way when things are being pulled from you and you're trying to hold on to everything that you have. And meanwhile, the one thing that's so important to you is like slipping away. And so, like, I can understand not knowing what you don't know. I can understand that because these patterns are invisible to you until you're forced to see them, right? This is your norm. And that's why I really try to remove judgment for people, because it's like, I've been there. I've done things that I'm not proud of. You know, and you look back, you're like, God, why did I do that? And then you realize I did it because of this. I was scared. I was at my limits of what a human can tolerate. And it wasn't necessarily like for my kids, it wasn't necessarily like they were the ones that were pushing my buttons. They had been pushed previously. My buttons were like pushed continually in, like they hadn't been, you know, I even if I took my finger off the button was still impressed, because it's like I was around all these people that they were predatory in nature, and I was the prey, and I was submissive. And it's so hard to recognize, and like you're doing things for all the wrong reasons, and because you're people pleasing and you think you're not enough, and so you think this will fill you up and make you whole again or something, and it makes you wonder like, okay, am I going to do this? Is this going to make me feel better? And you realize like that doesn't make you feel better. And so when I fell into the depression, and in that stage, it's like I could start to see where I was reaching out for all these things. I was overspending, I was overeating, I was under exercising. I was exercising when I was on my job and forced to do it, and I would come home and exercise, but that wasn't for me. That was because I thought like I had to show up in a pretty little package to keep a man. And then I also thought I had to do all of these things. You know, I'm working to support my kids because the kid's father took support and intentionally messed with my money. It's very selfish. And then and even if that's something he learned from his father, not once has he come back to be like, you know what, I'm trying to make this right. Not once. Hey, that's the thing, is these people will do this damage. And while I can understand mistakes, these are not like, and I can name myself as the abuser, because there's times when I have emotionally abused my kids because I couldn't manage my own emotions, because I didn't know what was causing them. And so I am the abuser as well. Like, I carried on the abuse. I can see that. I can see where I lashed out when I was overwhelmed, and I didn't know where else to send that energy. And while it wasn't the same as my father, I still have to account for that as a person. Like that, I wasn't able to give that to my kids. And even if they forgive it, like, I still did it. And so that leads me to my next situation. It's like, what makes these people continue when you've already spoken out to them so many times? You know? And like, this is where I get really frustrated with individuals, and I have to manage my emotions, because it feels like when I recognize people out there, that's a trigger for me, where people aren't willing to recognize my experience, and they'll have a point of view that is really damaging to children and our society as a whole. And it's really frustrating to watch, because it's like, well, if you're treating me like this and you're treating kids like that, and that's not okay. That's not healthy or okay. Like, it's not even acceptable. And so I think with this disengaging of these instincts, and that it's like I've almost gone the other way, where now I can't unsee these behaviors, and I'm trying not to let it. And it's almost like I've gone from one side to the other, to where like I'm seeing all this stuff, and I'm trying to point it out as a way to, like, call out the predators in the room, or at least let's say at least call out the abusive behavior. Let's call out the abusers. Not in a way to shame them, but to, like, hey, this is to educate. Like, what you're doing is not okay. This is not the way you show up. You're hurting people. You're hurting people that you claim that you're. This is like parents hurting their kids. It's like you signed up to be a parent by making that choice of, whether it was intentional or not. Like, when you have sex, like, that's the risk that you're taking. If you're not planning on pregnancy, you still have to be acknowledging, like, that's a decision you're making as an adult to have sex. Like, that's the outcome, a very high likely outcome. I don't care what provisions you put in place. Like, that's an adult decision. And so there are consequences, and it affects people. And that's the thing, where I can see myself looking back. I'm like, I didn't know anything at that time. Having kids in my 20s, like, that could have, like, I love my kids, but like, having kids that young, and people who encourage kids to have that young, is after they've had a lifetime. Like, there's no way I would encourage my kids at this point to have. I wouldn't encourage them to have children or settle down. I want my kids to experience life, so that they can know what they want and know who they are, and gauge, like, what needs to be, like, whatever you haven't healed and recognized within yourself, then you're going to pass that down to your kids. And that's painful to watch. Not just for yourself to watch it, but just to know that you hurt someone that you love. So, like, what is with these people who continue this cycle, that they had to live that life? I don't understand that. I don't understand how, and I understand aspects of it. I think some people will just stay comfortable for their life, and that's where now the enabler, because now you're an enabler, and now you're part of the abuse, because you've experienced the abuse, but because you found safety in it and you found shelter in it, now you're aligned with the abuser. And so, like, me as a parent, if I would have continued to be submissive and not step out and say no, and continue to say yes, and then also continue with that mind belief into my kids, to continue, like, oh no, you should do this, you should do that. And like, this is where parents can become estranged with their kids, because they have refused to grow with the times. Meaning they've refused to acknowledge that they were wrong in this, and needed to do better, and acknowledge that, and understanding we can't go back and change that, but you added to the abusive system that is in place. And a lot of people from that time it feels like they have a very God complex. And I don't know if it's just in that time, but it feels like just in that, I don't know. I mean, I'm just one person, so I only have a limited, perspective on, like, a lot of my experience is hands-on, but it's also like through the internet, and that's algorithm too. So I don't like to use that as, those aren't statistics, that's just my experience. a lot of my information is based on my limited experience with the people that I've met. And then I see it on TV, and I can kind of like not mirror that, but like, oh, pick that out and pick that out and be like, I've experienced that. That looks like what I went through. That's what they said. That's how they showed up. And that's kind of how I see it. And that's where I'm getting to the other side of like, I was overly accepting of this where, you know, my instincts were disengaged, and now I'm on the other side where I can't unsee it. I feel like I'm calling it on in everybody. And it's not like I'm not like a bounty hunter. I don't feel like I am, but I'm like trying to, like, I know for me, I need to, like, when I come across a path with someone and someone's not treating me with respect or consideration, then I have to speak up about that. And I've had to learn where a lot of people just don't care. They just don't. It's not that deep for them because it's not affecting them. And I think that's what we're having an issue with now, is a lot of people don't care because, for one, it's never going to affect them in their time, and two, if you have so much money, it was where I lost my money. My money was affected. First, it was my health, my mental health, my emotional health, and then my physical health, and then in the end, it was my financial health. Well, all along that, my financial health was dwindling, and it was when my financial health, if you can even call it health at this point, in this abundance period, that's where I've got a lot of my clarity, because I've been pushed to it, because I've held myself to a line to not go back to the past patterns. And that's where I've got a lot of my insight and like learn to regulate myself. And as I needed as a child, I'm doing that now as an adult in this time of crazy. It's, you know, a lot of people would be freaking out right now where I'm at. And it's not like I don't have freakouts. I'm just recognizing in this period of time, I'm actually learning a lot and getting a lot of wisdom. And I'm balancing myself out and giving to myself like what I didn't receive as a child. And I'm not working. And I think that's an important part of this process, because I'm just letting myself learn and I'm letting myself rest. And I did not get that in that household. I felt like I was always walking on pins and needles, ticking time bombs. I think even when I was sleeping, I probably wasn't resting because I didn't feel safe in that environment. And like I said, I don't think there was anything that was happening. I don't remember anything. You know, I don't think my dad did anything inappropriate like that. But I don't think that has to be part of the dynamic to feel unsafe. You know, sleeping in a house with a ticking time bomb, never knowing when it's going to go off. That's kind of like, you know, in that, what is it, like a, what is it when they, like when they haze people, when they're in the military, where they rush in early and shake the beds and get everyone up or something, like maybe it's in the middle of the night. That's what it kind of feels like, but mentally and emotionally, you just never know what's happening, and you really don't feel safe or at rest. And I think that's what I'm doing for myself now, and it still doesn't feel completely safe, because there are people out here trying to still mess with me because they don't like that I've chosen me and myself and to rest. But the more I rest, the more clarity I get, the more in touch with my instincts I get. And then I also am removing the fear that once was there, but I'm also learning to not tie into that guilt, because that was definitely, I was definitely raised to feel guilty for other people, especially men, and feel bad for men. And then you know, women, we're told like we're supposed to be a girl's girl, and I really try to be a girl's girl, and I realize those girls out there are not for the girls. They actually are male centered. Not all of them, but some of them are in there. And it's I had to recognize where a lot of women are actually really competitive with other women. And I was too. I was competitive. I didn't know why. It's because we were pitted against each other. We're, you know, when you're made to feel not enough, then that's a competitive energy, right? I have to be good in what I'm doing, what I'm creating. And I've gotten to the point now where I can learn to like not, to just focus on what I'm creating, that I don't have to be the most successful in my craft. I don't have to be perfect. And that's what I'm working on, is feeling like whatever I have to offer is good enough. And it's probably better than a lot, I think, in some cases. And so, and not to be cocky, but I'm looking for truth out there. And all the rooms that I've been in where I've looked up to these people, the more time I spend in that room with them, whether it be on their page or whatever, there's a lot of misbeliefs that have been woven into their messages. And so while that's great, that's what I mean by better. I'm like, the more clarity I get, the better I become. So I get more educated, and I don't have to, I guess, I can get more, it feels like I'm getting more in touch with my truth and the reality of my situation, and who I am and what I have to offer. I think is because a lot of times I would connect to people and I would dumb myself down, but I would be overworking myself, and they wouldn't see me for who I am. They didn't want me to be recognized, because they were like, if I really saw myself, then they feel like I would leave, and that's insecure, and that's control, and that's that's not something that you want to treat somebody like. So they were never my people. And so while I spend more time on my own, like really by myself, like I don't have friends, there's people that I see from day to day, and we're friendly, but it's not on a deeper level. I don't know them as a person. I have ideas of them, but at the same time, like I'm in a position right now where I feel very vulnerable in a way that I have to really limit my energy, because I'm still working through fatigue, and I'm getting a lot of answers. And I find even with the people in my life, it's not a lot, but it's enough to still kind of show me where I need to do more work. And sometimes I'm over, and sometimes I'm under, and it's finding my middle ground where I feel like I'm not judging others for the wrong reasons, but making sure I'm keeping people accountable to like where like how they treat me and how I treat other people. And so I'm also revising a lot of like belief systems I have that are kind of like branching off. Like if you ever saw like a mind map, they're like ways where you put words down and you branch off those words to get like brainstorming. And I feel like that's kind of where I started, and then I'm doing all these little branchings off to be like, why do I think like that, and why do I make a judgment about that? And then I'm realized I don't. Let's pull that back, because that doesn't affect me. It's not even about me. I don't need an opinion about that, right? And so. I think I've just gotten so used to like picking out the predators and trying to figure out who is what, and like recognizing certain people showed up this way. So I'm like, okay, just because they, let's just say all the predators wear a red hoodie, that doesn't mean every predator in a red hoodie is a predator, right? So like I have to recognize where we have been ingrained also to believe certain things that, certain, because I'm a single mother, that there's a lot of people have negative beliefs about single mothers. And because I'm a single person, there's a lot of people have a lot of ideas about why I'm single, and that I'm picky, or that whatever they got. So I have to recognize where I make sure I'm not doing that back to other groups, and get tied into, because like I can be conservative and liberal, and I can see the benefits and the downfalls in both groups and belief systems. And so for me, not to make this political, but I'm trying to meet myself in the middle, to where I'm trying to recognize where I have been trained to look down on other people to make myself feel bigger, because I have been there too, not in an aggressive manner that other people have, but it's still there, and it's still taking up brain power, and it doesn't need to. And it's and then I also have to be on the other side, to where I do think some rules are in place for a reason. And it's not necessarily like where people can see the benefit of it at the time, but I think it is helpful to have it in place. And I think sometimes we have rules in place and they're lacking like more definition, to where this could be an appropriate rule, but not in like that there are gray zones in every area. And unfortunately, when there's gray zones, that's where the abuse comes in. And so we just need people that are adults in the room with common sense that are put in these positions. I feel like a lot of people have been put in these power positions. Like I'm watching these YT, like the YouTube, council meetings, and you got a bunch of old people sitting around a table. They're out of shape, unfit, and closed-minded. And like, how did they get that position there? Who held that interview and said, I think you're going to be a good candidate? Because when you really look at these meetings, I'm not talking about my local town. because I'm trying to get my I have to focus on me before I can focus on others. That's where I'm at right now, and I will get there. But I have to make sure I'm on the solid footing before I can start really getting involved in like other things. But like I'm just watching this on YouTube where it's like somewhere in the States and they're showing like, you know, these are like school council boards. These are like small town council boards where they're talking about water quality. And this one guy brings in documentation, like a pile of it to prove like what the issue is. And these people are not even listening or looking at him, and which means they're not even interested. They have no reason. And so like all you would have to do is watch. Like what I saw was very easy to see. And so why are the people who have, you know, hired these people not watching the same footage and making the same calls and asking questions? That's what I want to know. Because if you can't, and you're not willing, and you're not open, and the people who have hired these individuals, they're meant to supervise them ongoingly, not just at the hire date and then like a 3 months mark, oh, you seem to have no problems, we're good. You know, that's kind of like putting your oldest in charge of the youngest, and because they're all smiley at the door while you're leaving to go out on your date night, and then you don't pay attention to the ring cam where like that the older one is like totally like harassing the younger ones. Like you can't just stop supervising. It's such a weird idea. And it's because the people above them who hire them have a God complex as well. So like they think their decision is God, you know, Bible, and like they're very overly confident in their decision making skills and discernment. But once again, they lack experience and they have an abundance of confidence. And so this is where like this is where I'm talking about, like this is a problem. This is it feels like this is voluntary. This is voluntary. How do you not recognize? Well, if you're getting all these complaints from these people about what's not working, how do you not take that and say, I might be doing something wrong? How can, okay, so I've seen a different, like a lot of people support porn, and I don't support it. Just because numbers support it doesn't mean it's right. But on the other hand, when you have people talking about something as the quality of water that affects all these other people, like I just don't understand how people are not looking into this. And some people say, well, that's the demon, that's like the devil. But it's like, we can't keep blaming these things on the devil and the demon. That really dismisses our actions and our choice and our need to take action and do something different. And I think like that's the problem I have with some of this religious and spiritual belief systems. It really places the responsibility in the hands of the devil. It really, oh, the devil did it. Well, then I guess, what are we supposed to, I mean, do you have the devil's number? Can we call him up and like have a conversation with him then? Do you see how like dismissive and unaccountable that is? The devil made me do it. Watch out, the devil's out there. He's going to tempt you. If you're weak, you're going to be tempted. That has nothing to do with the devil. That has to do with, has anyone taught you how to recognize like a bad behavior in a way that like you're choosing something because you haven't been taught something else? Like we look for things because we don't know how to create them within ourselves. No one taught us how to do this within ourselves. So we look for substances outside of ourselves to fill that void. I don't know. I know I'm rambling now, but some of this stuff is just so odd to me that for this long, and that's what we talk about. Yes, the patriarchy is damaging, but I mean, they need a partner in crime to make this work. And while I can understand women being afraid of men, I understand that part. And I understand how women have not been encouraged to like make their money. I get that too. I totally understand that. I don't know. I think I don't know if I'm missing something, but this has been going on like for a long time. This can't just be me like waking up to this and be like, oh my God, like what the fuck? Like, yeah, you know what I mean? Like there's got to be other people out there who are like experiencing this and recognizing this, and not just lately. Like this has been going on for a long time, and trying to fight against it. And maybe that's what the internet is. Maybe that's what the time of the internet is for, is so we can recognize like it's not just me. Like we can, even the disconnected can connect now, because we have that tool where if you're careful with it, you can use it for your benefit, but it can also be the downfall. So I don't know. I think I'm just rambling, but I just think it's interesting where it's like, it's something to look into. When these accounts come up, when people are abused, we need to look at, when children are talking about this, we have to look at, why did this go on for so long? Why were they required to turn off their instincts? Because that to me says there's a predator in the room. That's just my take. I'm amateur. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a psychiatrist. I have not. The only experience I have is my own. But I think this is important to look at this, because I know my experience, and that's what I'm talking about here. And I think there's a lot of other people that are similar, and I think we need to stop. The ones who are ignoring this are the ones that are the problem, and they need to, well, I can recognize, everyone takes their time to learn things. We also have to recognize there are people who are refusing to learn because they're benefiting from this. They're getting supply, they're getting resources, they're getting something from it. And so that's kind of where it's like, yes, I did this too, but that doesn't mean I have to tolerate this any longer. That doesn't mean I have to carry this on. That doesn't mean I have to. And I recognize, like, there are times when I've done something similar, and it's for different reasons, and it's not to also the extremes. And that's not to negate it. That's not to say it's okay. But I think it's important to recognize there are some people here that have lived a lifetime and had many opportunities to make change and still refuse to. I think that's an important thing to look at. And ourselves, and why we feel like we have to tie into that fear. But anyways, I'm going to stop. Thank you for watching, guys. Be sure to like and subscribe. There are ways to give back as well if you're in a position, if you're comfortable, if you're capable. There are links in the description box. Today is a good time. I am struggling financially recently. But also you can comment, and you can also hit that bell. You can share. If you don't feel comfortable sharing an actual video, you can also share just the channel. That would be helpful. But yeah, so I will see you in the next one. And yeah, that's it. That's all I got.